What's up, everyone? Rose Brown, the accountant therapist here, and happy tax season. Already the year's ended. We're in another one. So, this is the 2024 tax season where your 2023 tax return is being filed. So, of course, as tax season started yesterday, which was January 29th, we of course have to have a tax tip Tuesday to talk about how to get ready for tax season. The past couple of years haven't been quite normal, right? So we've experienced some ups and downs, some changes. So now we need to kind of pull it together, especially as we're looking to file the 2023 taxes. We definitely want to go ahead and make sure that we're doing our due diligence. We, meaning you, are gathering all your documents, everything that you were involved in, you're kind of getting together, right? So, with that being said, I am the CEO of Brown's Advisory and Accounting Firm, and we are located in both Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Atlanta, Georgia. You can find us on social media and visit our website. We have quite a few good stuff on there. www.brownsfca.com. I don't know why I always get tripped up there, but we have a lot of good resources on there that you can utilize, which I will definitely be pointing out during this live here so that you can go ahead and take advantage of it. It's free resources. All right. So as we get ready for tax season, here's what we need to know. Things aren't the same as what it used to be, as we all know. So it's a matter of making sure that we're taking inventory of all that we had going on in the prior year. So 2023, you now need to think, okay, well, how many jobs did I have? Did I have more than one job? Well, did I get unemployment? Did I start a side business? Think back on the different activities that you were involved in that produced income to you, right? So we definitely want to go ahead and think about those things. So did you sell any stocks? Those sorts of things. Now, as I've mentioned before, on our website, we have some great resources. So if whether you're an individual or a business, we do have a tax checklist on there. So you can go ahead and hop over there and just kind of pull that so that you can use that to help you gather yourself. So maybe it's a form that you're not familiar with, but maybe the right question is asked. You're like, oh, wait, yeah, I did sell some virtual currency, right? So it's just one of those things you want to make sure that you are doing it right the first time, because you don't want to go ahead and file your tax return and then you miss something and then you have to amend, or the IRS has to send you a notice. So this video here is to help you get it right the first time. Take inventory of all that you had going on. This way, you don't have to get a do-over, if you will. Right. So we started tax season a tad bit late, right? So every year it's almost as though they push it a week ahead. So tax season started yesterday. It will still end on April 15th, and which is a Monday. So though we have still a decent sized window of time left to file taxes, you definitely don't want to prolong it, wait until the last minute. But at the same time, again, you don't want to rush. We have somewhat of a time on our hands, right? So make sure that you're waiting for all your documents to come before you go ahead and file, because it's not worth trying to get a refund now to pay back the IRS later, or the state, whoever it may be. So it's just a matter of gathering everything the first time, right? Now, it's important to note that, as always, the IRS doesn't call you, they won't text you, they won't email you. So ultimately, you want to make sure that you're safeguarding all your tax documents, your tax information. So if somebody calls you and they're aggressive about getting your your Social Security, that's not the IRS. Do not give your personal information over the phone to folks that you don't know, right? This way, all your personal information can be safeguarded. What you may want to also try to do to kind of add to safeguarding your information is to obtain an IP PIN from the IRS, where in order for you to file or somebody to file on your behalf, they would have to have that code, right? So that's just an additional thing that IRS has put in place to help folks safeguard their tax information. Okay. Now, in regards to refund, I know in the past, some folks, they're used to pretty decent size refunds, right? Because of the adjustment of the pandemic. Now we're coming back to, again, some sort of a normalcy, right? So the refunds won't be as a lot as what it used to be in the past, but now it's going to come back down to its normal level. For a lot of folks who are eligible for the earned income tax credit, nothing has changed with regards to when refunds are issued, right? So if you are eligible for the earned income tax credit, your tax return won't be processed until February 15th or after, right? So you can expect your refund closer towards the end of February, early March, thereabouts. So that's to say, if you file your tax return, now or next week, if you will, it will just take a little bit longer just because of that earned income tax credit. Okay. All right. We already noted that IRS won't DM you, so you don't have to worry about that. And if you file your tax return and it's rejected, make sure that you identify the issue, or if you are working with a tax professional, that the issue is identified so that you can go ahead and resubmit. Now, if they're saying that a tax return has already been filed on your behalf, then that means somebody else is using your social security number. And in a situation like that, you'll certainly want to make sure that you mail in your tax return. Okay. And again, if there's a rejection, if you're not familiar with it, the person doing the tax return, they should be familiar with it. Okay. Now, I want to break down the rest of this live into two pieces, one for individuals and one for businesses. Right. And then we'll talk about some miscellaneous items later on. So if you're an individual, of course, taking into consideration how many jobs did I have? Did I have one job? Did I do self-employed activities as a sole prop? Did I get a 1099? Right. So if you're an individual and you were involved in any of those activities, you want to make sure that you're on the lookout. And of course, if you're receiving a document that you've never seen before and it may be foreign to you, do not throw it out. Make sure you hold on to it, package it with the rest of your tax documents, and bring it on over to your tax professional. Because at the end of the day, if you don't report a tax form, the IRS will do it for you, or they will penalize you to do it. All right. So what I want you to understand is, if you receive a tax document, the IRS already has a copy of that. Right. So now they're waiting for you to reconcile based on what you report on your tax return. Right. Because the person who issued you, say, this W-2 or this 1099, they've already taken a write-off for it. Right. Now the IRS is waiting for the receiving party to report it so that they can pay taxes on it. Right. So it's just a circular motion. So if you get a tax form, don't throw it out. Just make sure that it's a part of your tax return. Okay. You want to ask yourself, did I sell any stocks? If you sold any stocks, you should be receiving a Form 1099-B, right? And if you receive dividends from stocks, you may not have sold it, but you just got dividends, you should still be receiving some tax from, whether that's a 1099-DIV or still a 1099-B. Right. And then, of course, if you had interest, maybe through a bank, a credit union, online savings account, those sorts of places, you should be on the lookout for those tax forms. Okay. And one of the, not necessarily newer, but it will be more foreign to a lot of people, and that is the 1099-K. In the past, not many people received this based on the threshold that you needed to meet in order to get this. But now the IRS is kind of working on lowering that threshold. So you may or may not have received it. And of course, if you did receive it, again, don't throw it out. Make sure that it's a part of your tax packet, if you will. Okay, your tax documents. If you sold virtual currencies, or virtual currency, when I say virtual currency, I'm referring to digital assets, crypto, those sorts of things. If you sold it, whether or not you receive a tax form, you definitely want to let your tax professional know. If you do receive that tax form, again, don't try to hide it. Just present it so that everything can be accounted for. Okay. Now, if you had dependents and they went to daycare, make sure that you have those tax forms from the daycare, and it should have their EIN on there, their address, their phone number, their business name, of course. Or if it's a babysitter, you should also have that information present to go along with your tax return in order to be eligible for the tax credits that come with that. Okay. Now, if you had gambling activities, right? So maybe you went to a casino, you did it online or in person, you want to make sure that you obtain your win-loss statement, right? So in addition to your win-loss statement, if you get a W-2G, you want to make sure, again, I keep saying, make sure that it's a part of your tax preparation documents, right? So if you get a W-2G, a win-loss statement, that's if you had gambling activities. And I spend just a quick second on this topic here. If you went to the casino and you had gambling activities, the IRS only knows about what you get. And that's generally the case with any income form that you receive. The IRS only knows what you receive. They don't know what you've spent in order to get what you've got, right? So maybe you went to the casino and you won, let's say, $1,000, but you actually invested 10,000. So you lost $9,000. They don't know that you lost $9,000. They only know that you gained $1,000. So that's why that win-loss statement is so critical for you to reconcile it on a tax return and have it as proof. So if they come back to you and say, hey, I need to see if you really lost this, right? So you just want to make sure that you are substantiating everything that you put on the tax return, okay? All right. If you made any contributions to your IRA, really the traditional IRA, or if you took any distribution from your retirement account, definitely make sure that you obtain those tax forms so that you can receive your applicable deduction, or ensure that those distributions are reported accordingly on the tax return. All right. Now, one other thing you want to note is if you sold any sort of assets, right? So maybe it's your house, you sold your personal residence. If you sold something that you've owned, a vehicle, whatever it may be, if you sold an asset, you definitely want to make sure that you are accounting for that as well. Okay. Now, we've covered quite a bit on the individual side. So we're going to go ahead and switch gears over to the self-employed business side. Okay. Now, if you were self-employed, so that would mean any side business, gig economy, freelancers, Uber, Lyft, rideshare, whatever it may be. If you were doing something on the side that you were doing as a contractor, an independent contractor, you want to make sure that here you're keeping track of everything, right? Because most times you may be receiving a 1099 NEC or 1099 K. Okay. And again, that threshold is 600. So if you know that you've earned more than $600, you should be on the lookout for that. Now, of course, we do have to note that even if you don't receive these tax forms, you're still required to report it, because it could be a situation where whatever you're supposed to get, the tax form, it may have been lost in the mail, right? But the IRS received their copy. You didn't report it because you didn't get a tax form. And now maybe 2 months or 3 later, the IRS sends you a notice, hey, you didn't report this, we're going to penalize you and we're going to correct it for you. And then you're going to owe taxes, right? So it's just one of those things. Just make sure that you're keeping inventory of all the activities that you did. And don't think that just because you didn't get the tax form, you shouldn't report those activities, all right? Okay. Now, with regards to your self-employed activities, it's the same thing here. The IRS only knows what you have earned. They don't know what you spent to get the money. So whichever self-employed activity you had going on in 2023, you want to make sure that you're accounting for all your income, right? And all your expenses. This way you're able to substantiate your claims. Everything that you're putting on there, you can substantiate it. And of course, asking your tax professional, well, is this a deductible expense? Because not every business expense is deductible, right? So you want to make sure that you're having that conversation. And if you're doing your taxes on your own, at least get a consultation from a tax professional just to have the peace of mind that you're doing it correctly. Okay. Now, if you use a vehicle, your vehicle for business, or maybe there's an actual business vehicle within the business, you want to make sure that you're accounting for your mileage accordingly. And with regards to the IRS, they need to see a mileage log, right? So if you're not already using maybe a manual system or software to keep track of your mileage, you definitely want to do so, right? So the word of mouth in this situation has no merit. They want to see documentation. Okay. Now, if you are using your home as business, right? So you have a home office, you want to make sure that you're not losing out on this particular deduction, because though it may be small for some people, it can be a large deduction for other folks, right? So you can either use a simplified method or you can use the regular method. But all in all, if you are using your home office, well, your home, a space in your home for business, you want to make sure that you are accounting for the square footage of the home office itself, and then the square footage of the entire home, right? Okay. And then, of course, bookkeeping. It's one of those things where nobody really wants to deal with it, because now I have to go through my bank records, especially if you're doing it manually. So you want to make sure that you have a system in place. at all times, if you're self-employed, no matter how small the activities are, you need a system in place, right? So if you're using a manual system like Excel or Google Sheets, make sure that you organize yourself. So we're looking at total income that you receive for the entire year, right? And then your expenses, not necessarily itemized, but summarized. And when I say summarize, I mean, well, what was the total, let's say, supplies and materials that you purchased, right, for the entire year? Or what was the total travel, right, if you're traveling for business? Okay, so with regards to that, you're organizing yourself to make sure that everything that you put on the tax return, you have substantiated based on your bookkeeping records, because bookkeeping is a backbone of a tax return, right? If your books are incorrect, your tax return is incorrect, and you don't want to submit an incorrect tax return. Okay, now, if you are in need of any assistance with regards to, say, an Excel spreadsheet, you can definitely reach out as we can have that conversation, right? But ultimately, and it doesn't have to be anything complex, right? Especially if you have a simple situation, go ahead and use Excel, Google Sheets, get it going. And some people, it's so simple that they use a Word document. But if you have one of those complex situations where man, listen, you got a lot going on, you definitely want to make sure that you have an accounting software. And if you didn't have one, you want to get one now so that you can do some retroactive bookkeeping electronically rather than having to go through your bank statements and have to, listen, it's a lot of work. So it's a good thing that we are still at the top of the year, so you have time to kind of organize yourself, right? So that's why we're having this conversation here. Make sure that you do your due diligence and get everything together. All right, so the final few pieces that I want us to talk about is two interesting factors that have been added to the tax code, and that has to do with electric vehicles. So if you did purchase an electric vehicle, you want to make sure that you have that purchase document from when you purchased the vehicle. Of course, I imagine the VIN is on there, but you want to make sure that you have those documents and you're presenting them to the tax professional. This way you can get the credits that is applicable to you based on facts surrounding whether it's a used vehicle or a new electric vehicle, right? So the tax credits there are a little bit different. And then if you had any improvements to your home that is energy efficient, so we're talking about solar panel, biomass, those sorts of things that is going to improve the efficiency from an energy perspective of your home, you want to make sure that either you have the receipt with the contract. So you just want that outline from the folks who are providing the service or doing the improvement to your home. This way, again, you can take advantage of the credits that have been made available to you based on the recent tax code changes, right? So that's pretty much it for getting ready for tax season. It's not necessarily as complex as it used to be in the past because there's no stimulus anymore. There's no excess refund. We're pretty much coming back to normal. So if you're an individual, make sure you take inventory of all the things that you did in the prior year, multiple jobs, selling stocks, unemployment, gambling activities. If you were a business, of course, make sure that you do your bookkeeping. It is critical. And don't forget to wait for those 1099s to come in the mail too, if you are involved in those activities. Now, if it's a situation where you haven't received it yet, most times you can log into either that third-party software or your employer platform and pull those tax documents that you need. And that also includes if you are waiting for your education tax form. So that's a 1098-T. If you're waiting for that either for yourself or for your dependent, if you haven't received it, you can definitely log on to the school's website and go ahead and retrieve that. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful. And don't forget, every Tuesday at 7 p.m., there will be a new Tax Tip Tuesday live video geared towards the general public, really to educate folks on things that need clarity. We need clarity on a lot of stuff. The tax code isn't necessarily easy to read. So the goal here is to really break it down for everyone so that we have equal access and understanding to the same information. Again, my name is Rose Brown, also known as the Accountant Therapist, and it was such a pleasure, and I can't wait for us to talk again next week.